Subscribe, like, and comment now, because what you're about to see inside Snohomish County Jail will change the way you look at every meal behind bars. Inside Snohomish County Jail, how prison food killed an inmate. It started just after breakfast. The cafeteria had emptied hours earlier, leaving echoes of clattering trays and murmurs of inmates complaining about the slop served daily. Officers performing their routine checks noticed something unusual on the floor of cell block C. An inmate, Michael Harper, 36, slumped over, barely breathing. His tray was tipped over, a half-eaten portion of gruel sitting in front of him, untouched by any curiosity. Panic erupted immediately. Officers called for medical aid, while other inmates pressed against the bars, whispering, eyes wide. Harper had been serving time for burglary. He wasn't violent, didn't belong to any gang, and his health record showed nothing beyond mild food sensitivities. Yet here he was, pale, gasping, his face twisted in silent agony. The paramedics arrived within minutes, but the signs were clear: something in the food had gone terribly wrong. By the time Harper was transported to the hospital, his condition was critical. Detective Carla Reyes, assigned to the jail's internal investigation unit, was notified. She had handled cases of inmate deaths before, but this one felt different. She walked the length of the cafeteria, taking in the fluorescent glare bouncing off stainless steel tables, the faint smell of disinfectant mixing with the lingering aroma of processed meals. Something about the setup screamed negligence, but she had learned never to jump to conclusions. Prisons were full of hidden systems and invisible hierarchies. Her first step was to examine the meal itself. The tray, still sealed in an evidence bag, contained oatmeal with small flecks of mold, undercooked eggs, and a side of processed meat that smelled faintly metallic. Not immediately lethal, yet Harper's symptoms had appeared within minutes. That suggested an allergic reaction, contamination, or an ingredient that should never have been in his portion. Interviews with fellow inmates were slow. Many feared retaliation. Others were too cautious to speak. One inmate, a long-term prisoner named Darius Slim Bennett, mentioned in a hushed tone that Michael had complained earlier that week about a new batch of processed meat that smelled off. He had also tried to alert a guard, but the officer reportedly shrugged it off. By the end of the day, Reyes had compiled a troubling pattern: complaints about meals, ignored warnings, and a chain of command that prioritized efficiency over safety. But the real shock came when she inspected the kitchen logs. The labels on the ingredients didn't match what had been delivered. Some were expired. Some were meant for another wing. And tucked inside the daily menu report, a small note from the night cook read, "He shouldn't have eaten this." Reyes froze. Someone inside the jail had known. Someone had allowed Michael Harper to eat a meal that could kill. And when she opened the CCTV footage from the cafeteria, what she saw next made her question everything she thought she knew about inmate safety. Detective Carla Reyes replayed the cafeteria footage over and over, her eyes straining to catch every movement in the harsh fluorescent glare. The CCTV revealed small details others had missed: the kitchen staff preparing the trays hurriedly, gloves absent, some utensils used interchangeably for raw and cooked food. Harper had been served last, his tray delivered by a junior guard whose nervous glance lingered a moment too long on the tray. Nothing about the footage screamed intent, but every action hinted at negligence, and perhaps something darker. Reyes turned her attention to the kitchen logs again. A shipment of processed meat marked HMP approved had been delivered to Snohomish County Jail just 2 days prior. According to paperwork, it should have been refrigerated at 35 degrees Fahrenheit, but internal temperature logs showed it sitting at 52 degrees for over 12 hours. Cross-referencing the delivery schedule, Reyes realized the meat had been incorporated into meals for multiple wings. Harper's tray was the first where the contamination had proven fatal. Interviews with other inmates revealed whispers Reyes hadn't expected. One young prisoner, clearly fearful, described how some trays were tested on select inmates. No one knew who decided, but those meals were always slightly different, sometimes undercooked, sometimes seasoned with a chemical that left a metallic aftertaste. The explanation was always vague: it's part of the routine. Routine, Reyes noted grimly, for what? Efficiency. Experimentation. Control. Medical records arrived that afternoon. Harper had an allergy to sulfites, a fact not widely known in the kitchen. The processed meat he had eaten contained sulfite preservatives, legally approved but deadly for those susceptible. Reyes compared this to other recent inmate hospitalizations. Mild reactions, dismissals by staff, warnings ignored. Harper hadn't been the first to fall, and tragically, he would not be the last if the systemic failures continued. By nightfall, Reyes had mapped a network of negligence: the night shift cook, a junior guard, a kitchen supervisor, and administrative oversight that had ignored repeated complaints. Each person pointed to another, creating a dangerous chain of plausible deniability. Someone was accountable, but proving it would require precision, courage, and timing. Then came a tip. A whistleblower from the kitchen, anxious and shaking, handed over a crumpled note scribbled in blue ink. They knew Michael couldn't eat it. They did it anyway. Reyes's stomach tightened. This wasn't just negligence. This was deliberate, or at least reckless beyond belief. Later that night, she reviewed another clip, a tray being prepared for the next breakfast. She froze when she noticed a shadow linger over the same contaminated meat container. A second later, a hand slid a small label across it, almost imperceptibly. The camera angle didn't show who, but Reyes knew. Someone was watching, and someone was controlling what inmates ate. The next morning, she received a call that made her heart pound. Another inmate had been hospitalized after eating the same processed meat batch. The clock was ticking. And the deeper Reyes dug, the more she realized that uncovering the truth could put her in danger too. By the third day of the investigation, Detective Carla Reyes knew the walls of Snohomish County Jail were closing in. The hospital reports confirmed what she had feared. Multiple inmates had suffered severe reactions from the same batch of processed meat. Some survived, some were lucky enough to avoid hospitalization, and one, tragically, Michael Harper, had died. Each record painted the same picture: ignored warnings, negligent oversight, and a system too rigid to adapt. Reyes returned to the kitchen, this time with court authorization to inspect every inch. The fluorescent lights flickered over stainless steel counters, the scent of disinfectant sharp in her nostrils. Refrigerators hummed steadily, but the temperature logs she examined didn't match reality. A digital monitor showed readings far cooler than the actual thermometers inside the units. Someone had falsified the data, likely to cover repeated mishandling. Interviews with the kitchen staff revealed a culture of fear. Junior cooks admitted that any complaint about spoiled or dangerous food was met with laughter, threats, or isolation. A long-term inmate, who had been used as a test subject for certain meals, described trays being intentionally altered, subtly, but enough to provoke reactions in vulnerable inmates. He named a senior kitchen supervisor, known only as Peterson, as the orchestrator, a man who avoided scrutiny by staying behind the scenes. Reyes pieced together the timeline. Harper ate the meal at 8:17 a.m. The reaction began within minutes. The staff member delivering the tray, a nervous guard, hesitated when Harper pointed out a strange smell. He later admitted being told it's fine, serve it anyway. The memo, buried in the internal kitchen communications, had been signed and approved by Peterson himself. As the detective dug deeper, threats began to surface. Anonymous notes slid under her office door read, "Stop digging or you'll be next." Emails from unknown addresses hinted at protecting the system. Reyes felt eyes on her everywhere, even outside the jail gates. Someone didn't want this investigation to succeed, and she realized the danger wasn't confined to the inmates. Then came the most shocking revelation. The shipment of meat had not been properly inspected at delivery. The supplier had flagged it as partially spoiled, but internal documents showed the warning had been ignored by the administrative chain of command. The negligence wasn't accidental, it was systemic. The final piece fell into place when she cross-referenced medical records with cafeteria logs. Every major allergic reaction over the past year had a common thread: same kitchen, same supervisor, same ignored warnings. Harper's death was the predictable culmination of months of oversight, secrecy, and fear. By the end of the day, Reyes stared at the evidence pile on her desk: reports, emails, photos, and surveillance footage. The system was complicit. And she knew one thing with chilling certainty: uncovering the truth would make powerful enemies, and the next target could be anyone who dared to expose the deadly meals within Snohomish County Jail. The morning sun filtered weakly through the barred windows of Snohomish County Jail, but it offered no warmth to Detective Carla Reyes. The investigation had reached a critical point. She now had incontrovertible evidence: contaminated food, falsified logs, ignored warnings, and the chain of command that had allowed Michael Harper to die. But she also knew the system could swallow her evidence whole if she wasn't careful. Reyes met with the county prosecutor in a sterile conference room. She laid out the facts methodically: kitchen records, supplier warnings, surveillance footage, inmate testimonies. The prosecutor nodded grimly, but his words were cautious. "If we proceed, this will shake the entire county jail system. Are you prepared for the fallout?" Reyes didn't flinch. "I'm prepared for the truth to come out. That's all that matters." Back inside the jail, tension simmered. Inmates whispered about the investigation, and staff were uneasy, casting wary glances toward the kitchen. Peterson, the senior kitchen supervisor, had vanished the previous night. No explanation. No resignation. No internal report. Reyes suspected he had gone underground, perhaps tipped off by colleagues who feared the exposure. The disappearance only confirmed her suspicion that someone in the administration had been protecting him. Then came a second shock. A whistleblower, one of the junior kitchen staff, contacted Reyes under the cover of night. He revealed that Peterson had kept a hidden ledger documenting problem meals, including the one Harper had eaten. Each entry listed the intended victim, the reaction expected, and the risk mitigation plan. The ledger proved deliberate recklessness: no accident, no negligence. Someone had decided which inmates could be put at risk. Reyes secured the ledger, feeling a mix of triumph and dread. The story was bigger than one inmate's death. It was a systemic failure with a chilling undertone. Inside Snohomish County Jail, even meals were weapons, and lives were disposable. As she prepared the case for court, a final revelation emerged from medical records. Another inmate had nearly died from the same batch of meat a week later. That inmate, whose identity remained protected, confirmed that warnings had been ignored at every level. Harper's death had not been an isolated incident. It was a preventable tragedy in a culture of silence, fear, and bureaucratic indifference. The trial eventually commenced, and Peterson was apprehended weeks later in a neighboring county, attempting to flee with falsified documents. The evidence was irrefutable: deliberate endangerment, falsifying logs, and causing a fatality. But the emotional weight lingered. Families mourned, inmates remained fearful, and the jail system itself was shaken to its core. Detective Reyes walked past the cafeteria one final time. Empty trays, stainless steel counters, and flickering fluorescent lights remained. The walls held secrets, some revealed, some buried. Harper's story was told, but the warning was clear. In a place where meals are controlled, rules are silent, and negligence can be deadly, survival depends not just on behavior, but on luck. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it.